time to shuffle up. With Duncan, Jeff, and Sloan, let's fill our cups. Commander decks in hand, the battle's about to start. A podcast for the legends, where magic meets the heart. Commander's Pod, where the stories unfold. With heroes and villains, new and old. Duncan, Jeff, and Sloan guide the way. In the world of EDH we play.
Hello everyone, welcome again to Commander's Pod. I'm your pod father, Duncan.
I'm Sloan.
I'm Jeff.
Thanks again for joining us. So I do want to apologize again. We have been having some equipment issues, but we have all new equipment this week. Much more professional equipment, and I think fancy.
New equipment, not new people.
Not new people. So
That would
I
have
think
been nice for them though if we would have delivered both.
yeah. Can you imagine? But anyway, I do think we've got it straightened out now. So today we're going to talk about, we're going to do a deck tech on Gishath. That was requested by one of our fans. So we're going to do that. Also, we are going to talk about Jeff got in the wild again.
I know.
And Sloan was absent again. Now Sloan's the one not getting out there.
Yeah, I was being a good person and helping somebody all day on Saturday.
Yeah, that's the worst.
I helped someone too. I helped Duncan have fun.
Jeff will reveal his aggro side once again. We'll have some pro tips and some more stuff. So,
Hey Duncan, before we move into that stuff, just to go back to the microphone things.
yes.
First of all, we should take a moment and just acknowledge our Patreon subscriber who's been very consistent. And also just ask that if you guys do like listening to us, it's obviously a blessing for you to subscribe. Thank you very much. It's also a blessing if you have a chance to go on Patreon. We are going to be offering some more benefits there coming up, which we'll be talking about, which will be exclusive to Patreon subscribers. So please keep tuned for that.
And just a little hint, that contest we've been talking about, you may get some benefits in the contest as a Patreon subscriber. So,
As they should.
yeah. So just a little hint there. So anyway, let's move into talking about Jeff in the wild again. So we played some games the other night. Unfortunately, this time Jeff did win most of those games. How many did you lose? Two?
Two, I think.
Two. Out of what? How many? 5 or 6?
I don't know. You know, something like that.
Yeah, I think it was 5 or 6. So, odds weren't great there. But and the worst part though is that I didn't win it.
Wow.
Yeah. But we were playing with Andrew and Lucas, and we were also playing with Devin.
Okay.
So.
But we were always playing a 4-person pod.
Yes.
So there was a point where Devin hopped out because playing 5 people can be difficult sometimes.
Yes. So it's not for everybody. It does tend to make the games go longer. So, so let's talk a little bit about that. So Jeff pointed out to me that the group that I play with, which is like Andrew and Lizard and Lucas and Chris. Oh, Chris was there too. Chris.
Oh, that's right. That's right.
Chris.
Yeah.
I was trying to think
For
who
sure.
the fourth was. One was Devin. It was Chris.
Yeah.
There's others too, Tony. I'm not going to get into all of them, but that meta has kind of gotten away from. Well, I guess not away from. They tend to play everything. They just kind of vomit out their hand, get everything on the board, and try and overwhelm with value right away.
Right.
And that's not a thing that Jeff tends to do. No, Jeff does exactly the opposite. We've talked about it. He tends to hold things back. He usually cas at 5 cards in his hand.
Yeah, and you also pay attention to when the board wipe turns are going. Look what's going on in the board. Does someone have no creatures? They might board wipe, so don't dump out into a board wipe.
Right. And one of the reasons I was telling him that happened is because for a long while we had gone to more combo-y decks and more, spell slinger decks and
Right.
less creature heavy. And so it wasn't you didn't have board wipes, you were just casting spells and stuff.
Right.
Or if you
Going for a combo.
Right.
Yeah.
If you had creatures that were part of a combo or adding to your value to get to the combo.
Right.
And I will say, like Andrew will tell you this himself, he is an all-in kind of player.
Sure.
He does not hold anything back. his strategy is I'm all in, and if you wipe out my stuff, I'm coming after you.
Which I think we've talked about Chris before, and just a shout out to Chris, because there was a moment where she was going to, I think, path sword to plowshares.
Yeah.
Your commander, but it wasn't necessary. Your commander wasn't really affecting anything that bad at that time.
Right.
Certainly wasn't going to kill her. And you, with a heightened, because I don't think you thought she was going to listen to you, so you were at about a level 7 when you needed to be about a level 4, maybe 3. But you told her, you don't have to use that spell right now.
Yeah. Because
like, just hold it.
The way she said it was to the rest of the table. She's like, should I take out his commander or should I take out this? I have a spell I'm going to use. Which one should I take out?
Yeah, and I have to use it because she played a spell that gave her 2 red mana.
Right.
I think, or,
and she didn't want to let the red
I don't know why that helps you cast Sword of Plowshares, but whatever in her head, she thought she had to cast that spell. And it was like, you don't have to cast that spell.
I don't think it was swords. I think it was chaos work or something like that.
Could have been
sense because it's.
But she didn't have to use it. And as it turns out, she had another play that she made instead, which was fine, and she got to hold her removal.
Yeah.
But she did it.
Yep.
Even though you were at a high level, she still listened, and it was her right decision. And so
Right.
we've talked before about maybe she hasn't made the right decision. This time she has. I thought, give her credit. She did a really good
Yeah, no, she did. She did. And that's why I tend to be at a heightened level because I'm expecting.
You're
I'm
expecting
trying to
listen.
skip ahead to the end of the discussion rather than start at the beginning.
And just so everybody knows, in the game, I did say, oh, by the way, I'm glad you listened to him, Chris, and Duncan, you were too high.
The other thing is, Jeff did call in his Christmas present.
Yeah, but I didn't make you keep doing it.
But I kept doing it.
Oh, did you?
I never backed down.
You want to point out what the Christmas present was?
So if you haven't seen that episode, what the Christmas present for me to him was there would be a time where he was the threat and he was trying to convince people he wasn't, and I would agree with him.
And I said, Duncan, remember Christmas? Don't you owe me something? And he goes, oh.
You didn't even say that. You said, wasn't Christmas great?
Oh, yeah.
I'm not really a problem, am I?
It was so great, yeah.
That's very good.
Yeah, so what were some other things about that night you wanted to talk about?
I mean, I was using Xyrus, Thriving Storm. When someone draws a card, except for the first one each turn, you make a snake. And I played Mystic, what's it called?
Redaction?
No, it's called, right here, Mystic Reflection, which I have not cast that into something like this before. But what it does is instead of making a snake, instead of whatever token you were going to make, you pick a creature on the board it can't be legendary, of course, but you pick another creature and then you make copies of that. So instead of making 17 snakes, I made 17 copies of Terror of the Peaks.
Yeah, that was...
When it comes in...
You didn't actually get to, though.
No, because they're already scooped.
No, that's not what happened.
That is what happened.
I targeted...
No.
Oh, yeah,
I
you
won.
countered. I did. I tried to
You tried to stop
swords.
me, and I stopped.
I tried to sword your terror in response to the target.
It wasn't my terror, it was Lucas's.
Oh, right.
You tried to sword it, and
Yeah.
then I countered
You countered it, and then everybody's like, well, okay, you win.
And the other thing that was interesting too is like in that group, they don't play a lot of creatures, so creatures can really kill them pretty easily. And then there doesn't seem to be a whole lot of protection. Like you guys play counter spells,
Right.
but there's not protection and they're not ready for it. So they're planning like I'm building up and they're like, well, I'm gonna board wipe. And they get to their board wipe and I'm like, protection. Teferi's protection or any number of other protections, heroic intervention. And there was one time where they went to destroy it, I protected it. They went to destroy it another way, I protected it again. And so like, guys, run those packages of protection because it 100% won games for me. They were not ready.
The counter spell war at one time, I swear it was like 5 or 6.
Yeah, that didn't even involve me.
No.
That involved you.
But you were excited after. You're like,
Yeah,
"Oh, that's cool."
and you won too, Duncan.
Yeah.
Like it was.
I usually win
4
counter.
or 5.
Come on, I'm the
Yeah.
counter spell guy.
Yeah, that's true. As you should be.
Yeah. And I also, there was a moment we had all gotten a little salty at Jeff for being such an overwhelming problem as far as
mostly
the
one person,
arch enemy.
Yeah.
No, but I mean, even it might have been that game where all 3 of us scooped.
Yeah.
And it was like, oh my, and it wasn't, nobody, So anyway, but people had salt for different reasons. It wasn't all the same reason. It wasn't all directed at you necessarily. It was directed at, I think I was salty because Lucas had scooped.
Yes. And it affected you.
It affected me because I had some of his permanents.
That's right.
Yeah. So, and he was not in a bad situation. But anyway, so Jeff's like, well, should we play another one? And so the meta I play in, there does tend to be some salt because it is a higher power, but we're used to it, right?
And they might, and to some degree, they might have been upset at themselves too for plays they missed.
Oh, for sure.
Or
For sure.
for not.
And the other thing is, Lucas is a smoker. I think he was having nicotine withdrawal. He hadn't eaten anything. He's a diabetic. That's like, there's things going on in play besides.
But the
play.
de-escalation was very important at that part.
Yeah.
Because if you say, hey, I don't like that you're angry at me, or why are you so salty? Those are not de-escalating questions.
Right.
But if you go, hey, are we still good to play? Well, that's de-escalating. I'm just asking a question. Are we good? Are things too heated? Are we okay?
Yeah.
And then the attitude change from people was very noticeable.
Yeah.
Like, it was like, oh, I am maybe not acting the way I want to act right now. Let's just change it.
Right.
It was good for
Well,
me.
the other thing, like I said, Lucas had his cigarette and
That
he had
probably
a snack.
helped, yes.
And, so, I mean, it happens. You're going to run into salt at the table. You can't avoid it. You just want to try and minimize it and try and, to the best of your ability, tone it down.
Right.
If you're the one exhibiting the salt, and like he said, don't go aggressive at it. Don't say, well, why are you mad at me? De-escalate it. Try and bring things back to normal. But there were some fun games. There was a lot of back and forth.
There was. Everybody brought good decks. We were playing powerful decks.
Yeah. I do remember at one point Devin really wanted to play his pre-con, and you hadn't brought
I had
anything.
like 18 decks, but I was like, pick a deck. None of these are a pre-con level.
Yeah.
And he picked Uro, and that
Well,
was not.
He didn't know your decks, and I'm like, well, Uro.
Yeah.
At least you have a few opportunities to try and stop him.
Yeah, that was not a very fun game.
Because it's not like the first time you bring him out or the second time you bring him out.
I think I had a lot of creatures from landfall triggers. It was ridiculous.
And speaking of the meta, back to that. So Lucas plays a lot of creatures in his deck. He's playing the toolbox. What's his name? Henzi. The toolbox. But the way he plays it is 2 or 3 creatures is about what he has out because he's blitzing them out so they die and then the next.
Yeah, but they do gross stuff and they just come out of nowhere.
Right.
And so that's something you have to know too, is when he's playing that commander, you can't be like, why are you targeting me? Because I don't know when you're going to kill me out of nowhere. So I have to stop you.
Yeah.
Which is tough. That's a tough commander to play.
Yeah, no, he's very good. You're building a Henzi, right?
I had built a Henzi and I was trying to figure out really how to maximize its value and everything. Unfortunately, for a maximum value Henzi deck, you need to have some pretty expensive cards. And I was like, I don't know if I want to keep investing this much money into this deck and because I had built one and I played it a couple of times and it was very low power. It was very minimal because I was focusing on basically all I was focusing on was value from ETBs and death triggers. That was all I was focusing on. I didn't really care so much about what specifically they were doing, but as long as I got a benefit from it dying or entering the battlefield that pushed me towards a W, that's what I cared about. And so I had built one and I had gotten it all built up and everything, and then I was like, I don't know, I'd have to invest a lot of higher power cards that are kind of expensive to really make the value worthwhile. And at that time I found Indoraptor, which is the same color scheme.
Okay.
And I was like, you know what, let me sub out Henzi for Indoraptor, see how I like that. And I actually like Indoraptor a lot more because
it's very different.
Yeah, it's very different. I don't really have any other deck like it. Henzi, that was one downside I kind of run into Henzi. I was like, this is kind of just a blitz stuff out, swing at everybody, stompy deck, and get a little extra benefit.
Oh no, the way you should take a look at his deck. Have you played him with that?
Yeah, I played his.
Because his combo, it does wild stuff.
That's the higher end power scale version. Right, yeah, because he has
that
creatures
deck
in there.
is.
Yeah,
that deck's probably. I mean, my decks are no slouch, but it had to be 5-6 times more expensive than my decks.
That deck
He was
is very
running full
expensive.
gold.
He's pretty smart with it because he'll blitz out Elvish Piper, which is a cheap creature,
Yeah.
which that blitz gives it haste. Now you can use Eldritch Piper to bring out permanently a creature from your hand, which might have cost 3, 4, 5 times what.
It's very smart. Yeah, he was a very good player. Everybody was there. I mean, we were playing Lucas, Andrew, you, and me.
Yeah.
In a pod. Like you had to have your thinking cap on.
Yeah, oh yeah.
For
those
sure.
were some games for sure.
Yeah.
And the other thing I noticed about those games, which I mentioned to Jeff, is in that meta, I tend to get punished for helping the table. Like I board wipe and get rid of the problems, and then people are like, "Oh, good, now you're the problem."
They do have an odd way of deciding who they're gonna go after. If you do anything to them, then they come after you.
Yes.
So, but you just take that into the equation, use that against them. It works pretty good.
My favorite interaction I've ever had with your pod before, it was actually when we were playing at Lizard's house one night. It was me, you, Lizard, and Andrew. And this is when I first built my Prosper deck, and I had just done a couple of upgrades from the pre-con. And we're over at Lizard's house, and it's like right in the beginning of the game, and I had in my starting hand Opposition Agent. And Andrew goes to cast Demonic Tutor, and I op agent it, and it's like it is my life goal now to just murder you.
I had my Kadama's Reach op agent by Lucas while we played.
Yeah.
And it took me a while to recover from that.
And you were playing your Ur Dragon, where
counting on those lands.
You needed lands, like you needed a lot of lands.
Yeah. So, but yeah, it's. I will say sometimes it's funny, and the best part about Andrew is he knows he's doing it too. He's like, I know this is I should not do this, but I'm now solely focusing all of my energy to destroy you. He goes like, I don't care who else is the problem, as long as you die, I'm happy.
Yep.
So
that's the way he is. Like I said, that's his.
It's very funny.
Instead of holding back,
things like that happen multiple times, and I was like, okay.
Yep. But yeah, no, I think you had fun. So just been out 4 or 5 times.
Yeah, but I'm gone
Christmas.
a lot the next 2 months.
Yeah,
so
maybe
probably not going to play for a while. Yeah.
But
I will play with the kids in Orlando this next week. Though.
Oh, there you go.
So at least with my boys.
So aggro Jeff, what's aggravating?
So actually, while we were playing, one of the things that happened was so many people. I don't know if this is a store thing or this is how Magic has changed. You guys will have to tell us. Go on, let us know what you think if you're seeing this out there in the wild too. But everybody's playing these decks where they take our cards.
Yeah.
And I don't know about you, but so Duncan gets upset at me because when I play the MDFCs, I don't like to take the cards out of the sleeve and flip them around because of that, anal about protecting my cards. I especially get very nervous when someone is taking cards off the top of my library without telling me. They're just like, I'm playing this, and then they're taking cards off my library, and then they're holding them with 2 fingers, and they're just like, they're not. I don't know how careful they're going to be with that, swinging them around.
So the funny thing is, though, what happened is
you're talking about me.
So you were like very, like, I could see your face, and you were like, is this how this is going to keep going? Are we going to keep playing each other's cards? And so he was so worried about it that the person that was doing it at that point did tell you a couple times, and you were like, what's going on? And they told you again, you're like, what's going on? And then they would just reach and grab for the top card.
Yeah.
So it's like they started and they did it, and you're like...
I think at one point I said, no, stop. Just tell them, I'll do it. And because I was paying attention by then.
Right, by then.
Because some people are more careless with cards, and I just don't know them.
Well, and the thing is, too, then at one point we were the same deck, I think, we were eating. We had gotten some food, and I was like, oh no, this person's playing something where they're going to steal cards, and they're eating something, and they put a lot of sauce on their sandwich, and I'm like, it's dripping into the tray that they're eating out, and I'm like, oh no. But the thing I did notice that person did, they're eating with one hand and playing with the other.
It's
they
just
didn't cross.
So that's the thing that's aggravating me is like, it's nerve-wracking now. Someone pick up your favorite cards where you've bought like the secret layer version or the expensive foil version, and they're just like, yeah, I put this down. Or some people flip the cards, and I'm like, good grief. Like,
yeah. Well, that's why you're not going to play your
Guy is
near
crazy.
mint, guy is
Oh
crazy.
my gosh, I'd be like, no, you're not touching that.
Well, so-
Here's a copy of it. I'll put it over.
I mentioned this before, but at one of the command fests, I actually had a guy walk away because another player, he said, I'm scooping. Because another player played something that was going to gain control of his card. And he's like, no. He goes, the card in question, it's not that big a deal, but I just have a rule. Nobody touches my cards. So if you're playing
not quite that bad. I
it's-
think in that case, I'd probably say, hey, just take this proxy. I'll put it over here.
Yeah.
You know, like take, those white cards that you can write on.
You were very nervous about it, though.
Okay, don't
Even
worry.
before they were coming off the top of your library, when it was just, you exiled the first couple, and then they got played, and you were like, well, can't you just keep them here? It's like, well, they have to go. There's several things exiling them, and it matters where they're exiled.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh, okay, if we have to.
Yeah.
I mean, I do have a question. How many fingers do you hold your cards with? Because like most people are just gonna hold a card with 2 fingers. Like who?
Well,
I
so
think
there's
you
a
need your
difference.
fingertips.
They're doing like this where they're putting a decent amount of pressure on the card.
'Cause-
Yeah.
Okay.
You just
I
hold
guess.
them carefully. It's not a big deal. I'm admitting I'm anal about it, but they're my cards, so I
Yeah.
can be
So
anal about it.
yeah, and the MDFC, for those that don't know the term or don't remember, that's the ones with 2 sides. A card with 2 sides.
modal double face cards,
Yeah.
what they call
So, but
Yeah, so the only downside about your thing is if, like, for example, with my crossword deck, I have sometimes where I exile your cards face down so you can see them. Only I get to look at them.
you are going to have to look at that, though, because as we pointed out last time, you did understand and say, oh, yeah, now I get
Well,
it.
they played those cards too.
Right.
So I had to give them my cards. I did. I gave them my cards. I was just nervous about
Oh,
it.
yeah, I mean, I get
And
it.
I hated how many times it happened. And every game it happened so often. I was like, what's going on?
Yeah.
Play your own cards.
But what I was saying is, with the MDFCs, what you have to remember, and we told you last time, you're like, oh, now I get it. Yes, we know right then and there that creature isn't
But what
actually
if
a
it
creature, it's
moves
a
to
land.
another area?
What if it moves? But the other thing is, later in the game, 3-4 rounds later, when you just go to look at somebody's board state and look back, you may not remember. You just see a creature and you're like, oh.
That's fair. I wish Magic would find a way. Like, I don't know what the solution to that is. It's kind
Yeah,
of,
I mean, like
I
somebody
already said it last time.
what's the solution? Well, no, I don't. But you're still sticking something in your car sleeve.
No,
you put it on top.
Yeah, but that can move off
But
the top.
if
to
you
be
use
honest
your,
with
if
you.
you use your infinite tokens you bought,
Yeah.
that you spent a lot of money for, you could just.
Oh, I could put it aside and use an infinite token instead.
Yes.
That's what we could do in the future.
Yeah, it's almost like I said last time. You just print the other side of the card. You just put it in a sleeve, and it's just a piece of paper.
A separate sleeve.
It-
Okay, I
and
thought
it's
you meant the same
No,
sleeve.
that wouldn't make any sense. You put it in a separate
That's
sleeve
what I
and
thought
you
you
keep
meant.
it with the deck, and
You
then
don't
whenever
make
you play
any
that
sense all
deck,
the time.
I very clearly explained it last time. You just don't listen.
We'll play it back. Play back the recording.
But yeah, all you do is like, because I have a deck where there is modal. Now most of my modal cards I don't care about. They're like some of the lands that are like 50 cents, like
Yeah.
that are like it's a forest on both sides. But I think it was actually Lost Caverns of Ixalan where like they made like a night version of the forest and a day version or whatever. So like I don't care about mine or whatever. But yeah, what I've seen people do is they print the other side of the like all their cards that are modal. They print the other side of all of them, and then they put them in the same exact sleeve, and then whenever they use the other side, they take that card and they just exchange it and they put it
That's a
there.
great
So it's in
idea.
the same
I will
sleeve.
do that.
Yeah, and it looks fine, and like it looks like okay, that's it. But the real one's over there, so you don't have to take it out,
Yeah,
or you
and
double sleeve it.
You
and
just
that
keep
way,
it. You
even
just
when
keep
you
it
take it
with
out.
you with your
That makes
commander.
complete
Yeah, with that
like,
box.
like tokens.
Yeah, so if there's 4 or 5, when you
Which
assemble
that's
4 or
another
5
thing
of them,
too that I
ready to
think you do need to do is keep tokens in the boxes. They
So
go.
I have some tokens in the box. I just don't have enough because you have to go through and do all that.
Yeah.
And I just have
just give me a list of what you want. I have so many tokens.
amazing. I'll have you
Yeah.
do that. Yeah.
I have boxes and boxes.
And you can use Moxfield to do that, by the way, too.
Yeah.
So it'll tell you what tokens you need.
Yeah,
You can do that.
Architect does the same thing. It tells you at the bottom what tokens you need for this deck, and then it also tells you, I think it even tells you how many of your cards produce those tokens.
Right.
You know, so.
Let's move on to that. Doesn't do what you think it does. Now, I think we've talked about this before, but I think there was some confusion, and it matters, if you're combining things. So we're going to talk today just about trample and death touch versus indestructible.
Right.
Okay. So the way that this works is break it down piece by piece is the easiest way. Death touch says you only need to assign 1 damage to be lethal.
Right.
Okay. Lethal meaning that the creature would be destroyed or sent to the graveyard. Okay, trample says that any damage over lethal can be assigned to the defending player.
Right.
Okay, so with the death touch and trample without the indestructible, what that means is one damage goes to the creature, the rest rolls over. Well, then you ask, well, what happens with indestructible? Indestructible says that damage will not send it to the graveyard. It cannot be destroyed.
Right.
Okay, so other than that, there's no other modifier. So it still works the same, it's just that the defending creature doesn't leave. So one damage gets assigned to the indestructible defender, the rest of the damage tramples over.
So if you have a 9/9 trampling death touch and he has a 1/1 indestructible creature, you're doing 8 damage to their face.
Right, but even if it's not 1/1, let's say it's a
15-15.
well, in that case your
Oh yeah,
creature dies.
15/15 would still be
Yeah.
Right, but it doesn't matter. The trample will still
The
go
steel
through
trample.
because it doesn't actually need to deal 15. It
It
would
only
only
needs to be
do
1,
right.
even though it's indestructible, which I think is where most people get confused.
Right, and that is from most of the times where I've seen this happen. That's the confusion because they say, well, technically it's not lethal because you're not killing it.
Right.
But the wording of death touch is what supersedes that,
Right.
and makes it so technically, yes, it is lethal,
Right.
even though it actually doesn't go to the graveyard. Death touch says any amount of damage, i.e., 1, is lethal.
Yeah, trample is probably the most dangerous thing.
So
And then the other thing that came up the other night when we were playing, and I don't
Multiple blockers.
multiple blockers.
yep.
So because they've changed the rules so many times, they
Yeah.
just changed them again. With trample and multiple blockers, let's say, for instance, I came across an instant in black, and I don't remember the name right now, but it basically said, you play it as an instant, and whenever a creature deals damage to you this turn, destroy that creature.
Do you want me to talk about the actual scenario that happened?
Well, it's not really relevant. I'm getting
Okay.
to what
Okay.
does matter about it, though. But the scenario that happened, we were trying to figure out what Andrew was explaining the rules of multiple defenders, and I was having a hard time understanding exactly what he was saying.
Right, because what he was trying to do was not kill one of the creatures.
Right.
Because that creature was giving us benefits every turn. He wanted it to stay alive.
Right.
So in that case, he just chose.
He chose to trample, not to do anything, and to deal all the damage to one creature. So when you have multiple blockers, you can choose to divvy it up any way you want. With trample, if you do not lethally kill all defenders, there is no trample damage. And as far as lethally, I mean,
Does the second creature have to be able to eat the rest of the damage?
for trample,
Yeah, because you apply lethal to the first creature.
Right.
You apply lethal to the second creature.
yes,
And this 8/8, let's say, still has 6 damage that would trample. through.
that would trample through.
Right, but if you had then 8 creatures that were indestructible, it'd be 1, 1, 1, 1, 1.
With the
1,
death
1,
touch
1.
thing.
That's the only way you would stop the trample.
Yeah, exactly. But so for
But you could apply the damage all of it
to
to the
one
one
creature.
creature.
But if you have
and not
trample
choosing-
and you do that, no trample goes over.
Correct.
Yeah.
Because you're applying.
You have to apply
You're
lethal
choosing to
to
apply
all
it.
defender.
Yeah.
And by lethal, I mean lethal. So if they're indestructible, it just has to be enough that they would have died normally.
Which I didn't even know you could do that.
Yeah.
But we actually had a time where it mattered, so it's
Yeah.
kind of cool.
Yeah, it was cool. So I did know you could apply the damage all to one creature. What I didn't know is, well, what happens to trample then? That doesn't make sense. So that's how that works.
Yeah, because the way with the new rule change, why it's a little wonky is, let's say hypothetically in a situation you had 3 creatures. Let's say your attacking creature, your single attacking creature had 9 damage, and the 3 creatures, let's say, had 10 toughness between them, a 5/5, a 4/4, and a 1/1. Right? You could technically, if you wanted to, deal 4 damage to the 5/5, 4 to the next guy, and then 1 to the last one, with the way the new rules are set up.
Yeah.
As opposed to previously, just so people remember, you had to deal full lethal to the first creature.
Or to whatever you chose.
Right, whatever you chose as the
order.
first blocker.
You couldn't move on till you dealt with
Right, exactly. So previously it was the 5/5, 4/4, 1/1. So if you decided I'm going to put the 1/1 first, then the 4/4, then the 5/5, that was the only way you would be able to kill it, unless they had some way to
Right.
save it. But we're just talking about just raw actual attacking and defending in this case. So the way it works now is there is no defense order. It's more of assigned damage order.
Yes.
Is the way to kind of think of it now.
Yeah. So that's just kind of how that works. If you have any questions about it, email us, cast@commanderspod.com, or if we missed a nuance that you think is important, same. So let's move on to our counterspell segment. Is Gaia's Cradle ban worthy? Because we saw a lot of them in those games, Jeff and I.
Oh, good grief! Yeah, and I didn't even play one.
I mean, let's start with Jeff since he has a recently acquired Gaia's Cradle. What he thinks?
I think if you're gonna ban Gaia's Cradle, you need to ban the reserve list cards that are too powerful. It's not just Gaia's Cradle. There's a bunch of them that are older.
So if you're not going to ban the other ones, then you don't think it's ban worthy?
No, I don't think so. I don't think it needs to be banned because I think what protects you from it is the cost of the card. And I think where that becomes iffy is when people are just proxying with no control, because what keeps you from seeing it in 10 decks? If I have 5 decks, I can't afford to have a Gaia's Cradle in every deck, presumably. So what protects the power level is that I can afford one, and so it's in one deck.
Yeah.
When you proxy, you get rid of that, and so I think it's up to the people building proxy decks to not put it in every one of their decks. But that's a personal choice, and we played with people who did that, and I'm not upset. I'm not going to not play with them. I just think it does unbalance the game a bit when you have it in every deck.
So I do think it's ban worthy. I think it's probably at the top of the list of those reserve cards that are on that power side. Because to me, the decks that care about Gaia's Cradle, it's out of control. Like, you know what I mean? 10 mana in a turn, easily.
Right.
And there's no even cost technically in regards to in-game cost to tap it. It's just you tap it.
You tap it.
There's other lands that are
you can't respond
similar.
to somebody playing it.
Right.
So, some people make the argument, well, what about Growing Rights of Ilmont? Because it flips into a better Gaia's Cradle because it can tap for green or how many creatures you have. And the difference there, I would say, is when they cast it as an enchantment or when it's on the board as an enchantment, it's much easier to deal with.
Right. Well, when you cast it, you can counter it. When it's on the board, you can destroy it.
Yeah.
Like you
yeah.
technically have two opportunities.
You can destroy lands too. It's
right,
just
but
another thing that's
the
strong.
difference is you can't respond to him putting into play the tapping it.
Yeah.
Like it doesn't matter if you destroy it at instant speed, he still gets to tap it.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter.
And even if
that's
you
my point.
If you have a deck where you have 15 creature tokens or something, if you only get to tap it once, that is huge.
Yeah, it's enough.
Yeah.
So
we played with it and it wasn't that bad.
So
people adjust to it.
So my counter argument to Jeff's argument, just for the sake of playing devil's advocate, is I think it should be banned because of the fact that it costs too much. Would be my argument. Because if it was a more affordable card, so more people get their hands on it and put it in more of their decks, it wouldn't be an issue because it would be out there in the wild more.
If it was out there in the wild more, the game would be broken and you'd have to ban it.
Why would it be? Using your argument against you, that doesn't make sense.
It does make sense because the whole point is when it does come down in the game, it absolutely changes the game. You think Dockside changed the game? Gaia's Cradle absolutely changes the game.
And that's why I say it should be
that's
ban
why the reason why it's ban worthy, but the only reason why it doesn't matter is because you shouldn't see it that often.
But
in reality, if people are following the rules of the game, it should be rare to see that card. When you just proxy Unlimited, it's no longer rare. And that's what breaks the only protection. Like the other card that's also powerful in the same vein is Sarah's Sanctum, right? Which says add 1 white to your mana pool for each enchantment you control. Also, into right decks, very, very powerful. And there's cards like that are...
The difference, I would say, is there are far more creature decks than enchantment.
That's true.
Yeah, but when you play an enchantment deck, you play lots of enchantments.
Right.
You can play a deck with creatures on it. Gaia's Cradle sometimes taps for 0.
I don't like the argument of price being the reason that something is not banned. I don't like the argument that price is the regulator or the judge.
Well, the reason why it's not banned is it hasn't become a big enough a problem because you don't see it enough. So it's really not necessarily price, it's just it hasn't been a problem.
Well, I think it's more the fact that the competitive scene doesn't care much about it. Because generally speaking, that should be what drives
The-
banning and unbanning.
And this is the problem whenever we
all
talk
the people
about
making
bans.
this decision did not play competitive.
Right, which is why it's not
Well,
banned,
not
because they
anymore.
don't
That is
care.
not true anymore.
Well,
The new committee has people on it.
I'm
deliberately.
saying though, but if he was right, is that the reason it's not banned is because the competitive side of the Magic, that doesn't make any sense because the competitive side of Magic had no power up until now.
But they were supposed to be
So,
balancing.
If it
They
was
were trying to-
casual, they would have gotten rid of it.
Right, but they were trying to balance. Like they even banned Flash just for.
But that's only did that one time.
Right,
right.
but I'm
Well,
just
that's
saying.
my point. Is because of the fact that none of them cared enough about the competitive scene to really be involved in it or be in it. On top of the fact that creature decks are not the main driving force of the competitive scene. In their minds, there's two reasons why we're not going to ban it. Unrelated to price. One, it's not something that's popular enough in competitive for it to be stated as an issue because creature decks are not what is a competitive deck. And two, all the people at the time that were until previously making these ban decisions and such, none of them really were in the competitive scene themselves anyways, and so they didn't really have any reason to do it. So taking the price point out of it, I think that is partially the reason why probably it's not banned, because it's not a big enough problem in competitive play to make it something worthwhile for banning.
I don't think it's a big enough problem in casual play. That's why they didn't ban it. They cared more about casual than competitive.
So
You said it yourself though, it's worse than Dockside.
Oh yeah.
So right there is why I think it should be at least discussed. I think it is ban worthy. I'm not saying it's got to be banned. It's breaking the format,
Yeah.
but
so
it does bend
this
the
gets
format
into that
very
discussion
strongly.
of the other side of Magic, which is a collectible part of Magic.
Yeah.
And the reality is, if some of these grandfathered in very powerful cards, what protects us from being unbalanced as a game is their price. And if you just ban them, then the price will drop very quickly.
Yeah.
And that's probably not good for the game. That's probably a mistake they just made with Mana Crypt. I think that was probably a
Jewel
mistake
Lotus.
for that same reason. Jewel Lotus is a newer card, so it's
Yeah.
less of that grandfathered in, but certainly that did affect people's collections. But Mana Crypt definitely did.
Yeah.
And it should have been pretty safe. Mana Crypt after this many years shouldn't have, I mean, people would be like, it hasn't been banned this long.
Yeah.
If all of a sudden you can ban Gaia's Cradle now, oh my gosh, all the reserve list
Yeah.
cards will lose all their value,
I do
and
think
we're screwed.
I do think that it would have to be done correctly. You know, if you were to ban it, you'd have to. The only situation I could see them banning it, I just was talking about whether it's ban worthy, but if the only situation I could see where they might consider it is if they ever do separate CEDH from EDH, and there's a big enough CEDH following to kind of support it a little bit.
I don't think people are asking for it to be banned out there in the world, big wide world, because I don't think it's seen often. And I would
know
say if
people
you
are
don't
asking
want
for
it to get banned, play with it responsibly. Remember, I gave the same advice for Hull Breacher. If you don't play with it responsibly, they're gonna ban it because you play it in the
I
wrong
didn't play with
ways.
it responsibly.
Right. So just play responsibly with Gaia's Cradle. Don't put it in everything. You'll be fine.
it's not my job. My job is to play the game and build decks, and if you give me a stupid card, I'm going to use a stupid card.
Yep.
Well, no. If I give you the card, use a stupid card. But don't proxy all these cards necessarily.
Well, but that wasn't the problem.
And
with
everyone
Hull
does.
Breacher.
Hull
Breacher was.
Proxying it was not the
You
issue.
were like, if
How
you
did
just
you guys
use it
switch
for
now?
the occasion, no, but I'm just saying, you
Yeah.
use Hull Breacher as an example.
Right, because if people wouldn't have played it with wheels as
Right.
much, it probably would have been fine.
Yeah.
But everybody played it with wheels.
Why would you not play with the wheel though?
Because it was going to get banned, and then it did.
Because his point is, it's not broken if you don't wheel.
Yeah.
It is broken if you.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, you could. Gaia's Cradle isn't broken if you put it in a deck with two creatures. What's your point? Like,
No, it's still broken because it comes into play and taps for 2, which is Ancient 2, but does you no damage.
And I miss Hull Breacher. That was fun. Anyway,
yeah, I mean, it's just it's slightly ridiculous that the argument is they're gonna make this really cool card, but it's up to you to not use it too much so that way people then get upset so they don't ban it. It's like, well, how about you try making it a little bit more balanced?
I mean, Johnny, we do that all the time.
So-
There are rules in the game we play. There are certain things that are unwritten that we don't do.
I mean,
It's just the way the game is. It's a casual game. The casual part is keep it casual.
right.
Keep it
but
casual.
If to me enjoyable is building a wheel deck and putting Hull Breacher in there,
Great. Then go play competitive. Like
So-
they will have no problem with that.
Well, except that's banned
It's
and
banned and
competitive.
competitive too.
Right. But in competitive, they don't care if you do everything. You
Right.
do every gross thing. No one's
Well,
gonna
they
be like,
do.
that's
They
not
ask for flash.
that's not fun. Yes.
And they ask for bans all
One
the
time.
time.
Yeah.
But anyway, so let's move on to our main topic, the Gishath deck tech. This is one of Jeff's decks that he talked about on one of the episodes, just kind of in passing. And
Oh yeah, and your buddy Tim, by the way, I did play at Maze's End deck. Was
oh
it
yes,
Tim?
my buddy Tim,
So Tim,
who
shout out
listens
to
to
you.
the podcast, had texted me and said, Jeff would probably really like a gate deck. Well, so he has that kind of in the Lands Matters.
Yeah,
or
the
the
whole
everything,
deck has
everything.
gates in it. That's how I
He
won.
built his from scratch. It's not the pre.
Well done, Tim. Thank you.
So Gishath.
Yeah.
Johnny, do you have Gishath pulled up?
Yeah, I got him right here. So Gishath is a big boy. 5 red, green, white. So 8 mana drop for a 7/6. Vigilance, Trample, Haste. Whenever Gishath Sun's Avatar deals combat damage to a player, reveal that many cards from the top of your library. Put any number of dinosaur creature cards from among them onto the battlefield, and the rest of them environment library in a random order.
So gross.
Yeah.
Yep.
Mhm.
And I can tell you, as gross as it sounds, it's worse to see it in person.
Yes, but don't try to build your deck so that you maximize his trigger. You still have to build your deck well-rounded.
Yeah.
Even if that means sometimes you're going to whiff on that. You're better off building a well-rounded deck.
Right. Although I'm sure it might be fun to just play,
Big stompy
yes,
creatures.
50 big stompy
Yeah.
dinosaurs.
You'll lose a lot, but it might be
But I
fun.
also don't think there are 50 good playable dinosaurs. Maybe there is.
Probably, no, there's definitely not
No.
50. No.
Not really.
No.
I mean, so looking at the overall deck breakdown, so you have 1 Planeswalker, 24 creatures, 12 sorceries, 10 instances, 6 artifacts, 9 enchantments, 37 lands.
Right.
So why don't you break it down for us? So creatures, what are some of the key creatures or standout creatures?
So you got some of the small ones. It's not even a dinosaur, but Delighted Halfling's nice because it gives you protection, right? They're not going to counter you.
When you cast your commander.
One of the really exciting ones though is one called Hunting Velociraptor. This one's wild. 2 and a red, creature dinosaur, first strike. Dinosaur spells you cast have prowl for 2 and a red. So that you remember Gishath with that amazing trigger? 2 and a red.
Yeah.
If you've done damage that turn. That's wild.
That is.
And that only costs 3 mana to
Can
play
you
that
read
creature.
Read what Prowl is too, because that's a newer mechanic that only
Yeah.
was in that set.
You must cast. You may cast a spell for its prowl cost if you've dealt damage to a player this turn, or with a creature with any of. Oh, so it has to be the same creature type.
So this is very similar to the free running mechanic in the Assassin's Creed thing, where
Right.
whenever
This was
I
a
hit somebody,
precursor.
so whenever an assassin or a commander you control deals damage to a player, with my Assassin's Creed Ezio de Frenzia, I can cast any assassin in my hand for its free running cost, which is black. So this is a very similar mechanic. Now the cool thing about this mechanic over that one is, whenever a creature you control hits a player, you can then prowl any creature in your hand that shares a creature type with it. So if you have double type creatures, which I saw one of the creatures you have, which you probably usually don't cast it, it's mainly in there. It was the giant, I think it was like the Terastodon, the guy that if you cycle him, he gives you like a trample counter.
Correct.
And he's like 12 mana or something crazy like that.
Yeah.
I'm assuming you're probably trying to hit him off your Gishath trigger or with a Prowl trigger, because he's technically a dinosaur beast. So he counts as a dinosaur if one of your dinosaurs get through. And he's like a 11/11 dinosaur.
So this is the fun thing about casual play. You do not always have to make the optimal decision. This is a great example of it. This card should not be in this deck. It's really not good enough. Getting a trample counter really doesn't really do that much because a lot of the creatures already have trample and they're doing other kinds of crazy stuff. The reason why he's in here is because I own the Godzilla Primeval Champion. And I was like, how could I not put this really cool Godzilla card in my dinosaur deck?
Mhm.
So I do. And you're right, Johnny. Sometimes I've casted him for 9 mana. Sometimes I've triggered him off of Galta, so he'll come out on Galta. Most of the time you cycle him, but most of the time I hope I don't have him in my hand, to be honest with you. So I should probably take him out of the deck, but what else am I going to do with him? He's so cool.
Yeah, and I will say the one nice thing about cycling is for 1 and a green you get to draw a card, so pay 2, draw a card, and technically with this one you get the extra benefit of putting a trample counter on something. Like you said, that's kind of a hat on a hat.
Yeah.
But I mean, for the most part, I mean, it is a one, the all art, if you haven't seen it, super cool all art with Godzilla attacking downtown Tokyo. Yeah, at 11/11 dinosaur beast, pretty cool.
And then there's you don't be afraid of nobos. So like cards that don't always function the way you want in a deck. So Wakening Sun's Avatar, 5 and 3 white. When Wakening Sun's Avatar enters the battlefield, if you cast it from your hand, destroy all 9 non-dinosaur creatures. This card is amazing, and it's straight up won me games because it's a one-sided board wipe. But guess what else also happens?
You hit it off, Gishath.
Yeah, but you could be like, oh, that's a no-go. Who cares? I got a 7/7. That's not that bad, guys.
Right.
So, and that's a good one. And then another one that's really, really powerful, that's not expensive, is Earthshaker Dreadmaw. 4, 2 green, creature dinosaur, trample. When Earthshaker Dreadmaw enters the battlefield, draw a card for each other dinosaur you control. So it's fun to have some card draw in there too.
Right.
Yeah. And then of course there's all the big stompy stuff, which is nuts.
All right. And how about sorceries? What are some standout sorceries?
Did you guys have any that you that you had seen on here that you thought about as I'm looking here? One of the ones that I think is really kind of fun is what I've talked about Open the Way before. I love that card. But this card, Don't Move. Don't Move, 3, 2 white, sorcery. Destroy all tapped creatures. Until your next turn, whenever a creature becomes tapped, destroy it.
And why is that in there? I know why.
It's because it's got a giant T-Rex on the front of it. So
exactly.
you gotta have it in there. I mean, if I'm gonna pick a board wipe, I'm gonna pick the one with the T-Rex on it.
Right.
But it can work pretty good sometimes. But there's a lot of times where I have this in my hand and I'm like, I wish I just had a normal board wipe for 4 mana. That just destroyed the creatures right now. So, but it's flavor.
Yeah. So another one I see is Savage Order.
Yeah, that's actually a really good one. You want to read that, Duncan?
As an addition, it's a 2 and 2 green. As an additional cost to cast a spell, sacrifice a creature with power 4 or greater. Search your library for a dinosaur creature card, put it onto the battlefield and shuffle. It gains indestructible until your next turn. Does not say you have to cast it. You just put it out there.
Yeah, and the cool thing about this is typically when you play a card like that, it doesn't have haste, right? And you're like, oh crap, I'm going to do this really cool thing. I'm going to sacrifice another creature to get a creature out that they're just going to destroy. So now I play a card and I lose 2 creatures, right? So I'm way down. The really nice advantage of this is that indestructible part because it will probably last till your next turn. And then, of course, it has dinosaurs fighting in the front of it. So again, flavor.
And most of your sorceries are ramp.
Yes, you have to have a lot of ramp.
There's another board wipe in Farseek.
Mm-hmm.
And then the Piece de Resistance in most decks, Tooth and Nail.
Yes, but I'm not playing I'm playing dinosaurs. So I'm not going and getting Crater Hoof. I'm not going and getting, what's the one that flies and gives everything flying. I don't have those in here. I'm just going to get dinosaurs. But it's still fun to play Tooth and Nail.
And some of your dinosaurs are gross.
Yeah, they're crazy. And then Farewell, remember, someone might also say Farewell's a no-go because you're destroying all your own stuff. But it's for when they've stopped all your dinosaurs. You have nothing going on, and you just need to reset the board. Farewell gets it done.
Yep. Instance, anything there that you particularly are in love with?
Well, so there's a card I don't play a lot, which is Get Lost, 1 in a white. Destroy target creature, enchantment, or planeswalker. The advantage of this is it's really good to have, even if you're paying a little more, like you're paying 2 instead of 1. 1 you could play Sword to Plowshares, or
Disenchant.
Yeah, there's a whole bunch of stuff.
I think
do,
Disenchant's
right? So this is 2, but I get 3 things I can target, including planeswalkers, which, believe it or not, sometimes are pretty hard to get rid of. So I really like this, and all they get in response is the controller creates 2 map tokens, which is fine.
Right.
Yeah, I would say Kindred Summons as an instant is pretty good. So it costs 7 mana, though, so 5 green, a little pricey, but the big advantage is because it's an instant, you can do this on someone else's turn, like, for example, your opponent right before they end their turn. Before it comes to you, choose a creature type, reveal cards from the top of your library until you reveal X creature cards of the chosen type, where X is the number of creatures you control of that type. Put those cards onto the battlefield and shuffle the rest of the reveal cards into your library. So it lets you dig through your library to get X amount of creatures. So let's be generous here, and let's say you have 4 dinosaurs out. For 7 mana, you can get 4 more creatures out that are probably going to be way more than 7 mana in total CMC cost. Plus now, because they came out on your opponent's end step and it's now your turn, they now all can attack this turn. And it's very well could be potentially a game-ending instant right there if you do it at the right time and no one has a response in that moment and you hit the right things.
And don't be afraid to do it at 2 creatures. Remember, you're playing dinosaurs.
Yeah.
You get 2 dinosaurs, they might be ginormous.
Yeah.
Beyond the fact that if you're playing this type of Kindred deck where you got big stompy stuff, you need haste.
Mm-hmm.
So I have creatures that give me haste. I have other things that give me haste. So you play this on your turn, go get those 2, attack right away. You can do sometimes too. Play it at the end of the turn and create
The pseudo haste.
Yeah, quasi haste, pseudo haste, or just have actual haste.
Mm-hmm.
And then a lot of Jeff's greatest hits in the instant. Chroma's Will, Arachnogenesis, Beast Within,
T-Pro.
T-Pro, that's his favorite card.
By far.
Heroic intervention. Yep.
Heroic Intervention,
Yeah,
Swords of Plowshares. I do find it interesting you don't also play Path to Exile with the Swords of Plowshares.
So I play Path to Exile when I play smaller creature decks. Reason being, I will do it to myself to get a land. When I'm playing big creature decks like this, where I know it's not mana efficient for me to trade a creature for a land, I typically don't play it. That's how I decide when to play Path to Exile.
I don't understand
when I
how
can
you
trigger
say
it on
it's
my own
not-
stuff.
It is most certainly better to trade a creature for a land.
No,
On your own stuff, no, but on
no. I'm
your
saying
phone.
I use it on my own stuff.
So you're gonna sword your own thing?
Oh, no, I will Path to Exile my own thing because I get a land for
Right,
myself.
but you don't have to. That's not how most people use
No,
Path
no,
to Exile.
But when I'm making a choice of what to play, I only play Path when I know I have a deck where I'm willing to trade a creature for a land.
But most people look at Swords to Plowshares good, Path to Exile is also good. Why not have them both?
Well, Path to Exile is good, I think. Like, if Path to Exile only worked on opponents, I don't know how good it would be.
It's as good as Swords to Plowshares.
I don't think so. Gaining life is a lot less important than getting a land.
I disagree.
Well, because it's also a basic land. It's not just any land.
Yeah, but who can getting mana ramping you? Well, anytime you want to cast that, I would prefer getting a
Let me
land
put it
than
this
life.
way. With that deck you're playing, I would much rather give you a land than 12 life, 7 life.
That is true in some circumstances, but there are cards that enable a lot of stuff that are lower. Like, so you get rid of my haste creature. Yes, I have a 12/12, but it can't attack.
And the other thing I would point out, it is hard to deal with indestructible creatures. You only have one way in here to do that.
Well,
Besides
no, fair
the
well.
board wipe.
Yeah,
I was gonna say.
fair
Well,
makes sense.
I deal with your indestructible creatures by killing you with giant dinosaurs. So I don't really need, I mean, what are you playing, Eldrazi? Like, you could play winged dinosaurs and dragons, but dinosaurs are pretty tough.
They're tough until they get hit by a little 1/1 Death Toucher.
That can happen. Yeah.
Enter Finn the Favor.
The artifacts is where it gets really kind of fun and
Okay,
spicy.
so let's talk about some of those.
So there are 3 ones that are really cool. I don't even know how to say this word. Chamil, the Inner Sun.
I believe it's Chameleon.
What? There's only... No.
Yeah, that's definitely right. Spells you control can't be countered. Huge when you're playing big stompy stuff. That's gigantic. This does cost 6 mana. Well worth it though. At the beginning of your end step, discover 5. So if you get in that part of the game where you're like, okay, I'm pretty sure board wipes are coming soon, or there's not a lot going on and I don't want to be the threat, you put this down as Value Town and you're doing good. Someone might be like, well, I don't play my dragon. I want to get my deck going. No, get this down and just start getting a little bit of value, because if a board wipe comes, you still have this. So those are the type of decisions you can make.
Right.
Yeah, unless it's a full board.
And then, Duncan, you want to take a look at Dino DNA? This one's fun, too.
So Dino DNA is one single colorless or any color mana. It's an artifact that says imprint. Pay one, tap it, exile target creature card from a graveyard, activate only as a sorcery. Pay 6, create a token that's a copy of target creature card, exile with Dino DNA. Except it's a 6/6 green dinosaur creature with trample. Activate only as a sorcery.
So here's the a Nekusar. How about a Nekusar 6/6 dinosaur? Like, it's nuts.
Yeah, no, it's a very good card.
I would actually argue that card might be a wasted slot, in my opinion. That was, out of all the cards I looked through, that was the only one that really jumped out to me.
It's a single mana and it's on theme.
But it costs 6 to actually use it. So it actually costs 7 to technically use it. Because you have to pay to get it out, pay 1, tap it to copy the thing, then pay 6 more to actually make a copy of it. So you're at 8 mana.
So this has won me lots of games because I get to the point in the game where I don't have cards, right? But I got this out. So my graveyard is now my hand. And the dinosaurs all have abilities. Almost all of them have very cool abilities. So when I'm playing these ones with abilities like Maverin, when it attacks, it gets more creatures. What's the one? Let me look on here. Where you can pay mana to kill creatures or gain life. Zakama, Tyrannosaurus Rex here. Like, all of them have abilities. You can even do a roaming throne. If a roaming throne ends up in your graveyard, which it likely will, if not exile, quite quickly, this is going to make a copy of it. So it's those abilities, and it's when you have nothing else going on and have no hand. So
Sure. I mean, it's just
a backup.
It's recursion.
Yep.
It's gaining value from other people's graveyards.
Right. And
It's
do
just
the,
very
and do the
costly.
math. Do the math, right? So what's normal recursion cost? Like Eternal
1 mana.
Witness. What's Eternal
3.
Witness? 3. It's one of the most popular recursions, right? 3, and it goes back to the battlefield, right? So this is 6. Do you think that in the game you can do it twice? Because if you can, you're on the correct mana.
Well, it's 7 and then 6.
Okay, but you're typically playing this before there's anything going on, and you're not using it for many turns later. And by then, they don't even remember.
Right. All I'm saying is that it's the first turn it's out. If again, you can play it early because it is a 1-drop, which that's a huge benefit to it. Is if it's in your opening hand, you can literally get this out on turn 1, which would be phenomenal. The only downside is it's potentially still, depending on your ramp, 3 to 5 turns later that you'd be able to use it the very first time, potentially. But again, I mean, it's very on theme. It's what's his face from
It's the main scientist who created Jurassic Park.
Yeah, so it's very on theme, and I definitely think, again, Jeff tends to lean more towards theme than he does sometimes overall improvement in some aspects.
Well, but it does do things.
Yeah, it absolutely does things. I'm not saying it doesn't do things.
It's
I'm not
better
saying
than
that it's not
Godzilla.
cool. But it's better than your Godzilla card for sure. But yeah, this is the only one I would say, like, if there was a card that it's like there's definitely other ones that are maybe a little bit better or what have you.
I would just
Godzilla
replace it
too,
for
but-
Eternal Witness.
but-
And at the end of the day,
Yeah.
I don't think it's that much worse than Ewit, and it matches the deck.
So,
The other one is Skull Spore Nexus. You got this one, Duncan? You want to?
Sure. Skullspore Nexus is 6 and 2 green. The spell costs X less to cast, where X is the greatest power among creatures you control, and they're dinosaurs, so that's going to be a significant discount.
You're probably going to pay 2.
Whenever one or more non-token creatures you control die, create a green fungus dinosaur creature token with base power and toughness, each equal to the total power of those creatures. And then you can pay 2, tap it, double target creature's power until end of turn.
And it's create a fungus equal to the power and toughness equal to the total power of all of the creatures.
Yeah.
It's ginormous.
Yeah.
And again,
That's correct.
this is protection. So some people might go, well, T-Pro is protection. Well, so is this. Because yes, you killed the creature.
Well, it's not all the creatures, it's all the ones that entered. Or died.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So a board wipe. This is when this is protection from a board wipe.
Or
Yes,
in response to yours.
I no longer have my creatures, but I've got this really big one that's going to kill you because none of you have creatures either.
Right.
It's nuts.
That one's definitely gross. And because you have so much land ramp, there's only 2 artifact ramps, which I bet people can guess. It's Soul Ring and Arcane Signet.
Yeah.
And then the obligatory Lightning Greaves to protect your pieces.
Yeah, just to give me haste, yeah.
Enchantments, anything particular? I mean, obviously growing rates.
One of my favorites is Carpet of Flowers and Growing Rights of Itlamok. I love those two
Yeah.
cards. But Rhythm of the Wild was what I was talking about before, which gives you haste. Obviously, you got Garrick's Uprising and things like that, Guardian Project to draw you cards. The two that are interesting, Welcome To. I'm not sure how great this card is. I think it's really good because when it flips, I'm not going to read all of it. You guys are going to look it up. It's called Welcome To ... It's a saga.
And on the back, it's Jurassic Park.
Yeah, what that does is you add a green for each dinosaur you control, and each dinosaur in your graveyard has escape. So if you flip this thing, it's nuts. I will say, no one should let you flip this. However, in the last time we played, I didn't get to flip it. And then the other one that's interesting is Steely Resolve. The Secret Lair episode we talked about,
Yep.
this was one of those cards.
Mhm.
And it probably doesn't need to be in this deck. I have it in here because it's really pretty, and I didn't have another deck to put it in. And it just says, as Steely Resolve enters the battlefield, choose a creature type. Creatures of the chosen type have Shroud. So it's not bad,
No.
but I wouldn't normally choose to put this in this deck.
Other than that, I don't, not much I think we need to talk about in enchantments.
Well, you could talk about your thoughts on lands because I think I break your you
Oh, yeah.
probably would not like.
No,
lands I play.
No, there's not enough basics. You have-
Yeah,
Well,
so
and I have
37 lanes,
37
there's 12
lands, which
basics.
is typically more than you play.
Yeah, but if you're playing a land ramp to get to big stompy creatures, I get it.
Mhm.
Especially when you don't have the artifacts. I tend to play artifact ramp,
Right.
so I do get it. But I'm shocked you have 2 mountains.
Yep.
5 forests,
5
plains.
That's
12 basics out of 37.
yeah,
So
that's
25
crazy to me.
So if you want to beat
That's a
Jeff,
lot
play
to
a
me.
Bloodman.
Yeah,
That's a lot to me.
yeah. I mean, in our meta, we do tend to play. Now Jeff hasn't really run into it too much. I haven't played my decks that have it in.
I have. You blood mooned me a few times ago when we played.
Yeah, but you don't see it as much as you could see it.
Right.
So I would never run this. I mean, there are people in my meta that would. Don't get me wrong, but to me, it's you need way more basics.
Well, I also tend to play more 3, 4, 5 color decks than I think anyone else we really play with a lot. Does
Yeah.
anyone else play as many 5 colors as I do? I have
I
a
think
bunch of 5 colors.
So you don't remember playing Epsom. I know you played with Epsom at least once with a guy we call Old Man Tony,
Okay.
because there's multiple Tonys. He plays a lot of 5 colors. In fact, in one he tends to play themes for a month. And one theme he had for 1 month was he only played 5 color decks.
Okay.
So he doesn't build decks for these themes. That's how he chooses what decks to play.
So that's probably why I play more.
Yeah, I have
Less,
5 color deck.
less basics.
But so what are these standout utility lands here?
Well, Cavern of Souls stuff comes in. They
Can
can't
be
be
countered.
countered.
Yep.
Boseiju, which can turn into a single target removal.
Yeah.
Kessig Wolf Run is nuts. Kessig Wolf Run.
Yeah.
X red green. Target creature gets +X/+0 and gains trample until end of turn. So you can, because you're also a ramp deck, you probably have a lot of mana. So you could just do a lot of crazy stuff. Other than that, not a ton of really.
I mean, you're not going to talk about your favorite land, 3 Tree City?
3 Tree City is a lot of fun, but it's not utility. It just makes more mana.
I was just bringing it up because I remember when we talked about it being announced, he's like, I don't think I'll ever buy it for $30.
Well, my wife bought 2 of them for me for Christmas, so I put it in here. I don't think it's as good as people thought it was. What's the price at now? It's still at $30.
Yeah.
It's not worth $30.
So,
Yep. I really thought it would drop by now. I think it will eventually, but
Yeah, I don't know why it's still $30.
because
It's really
they
hard to
kept
pull it off.
doing creature themed decks.
that
this
is the
year.
thing. That is the thing. Kindred is
It's very popular.
Yeah.
It's very popular.
So maybe that's why.
Yeah, and like I said, if my prediction's right about this year and what they're going to be theming this year with vehicles, I can guarantee you some of those crappy vehicle cards are probably going to start getting expensive because it's going to be the theme potentially. So,
Yep.
but yeah, 3 Tree Cities, one of those in there. But yeah, you have a lot of the classic multicolor stuff. Secluded Courtyard's another one that lets you cast stuff without a
But I will say it does feel good to play a dinosaur deck and have the land be called Stomping Ground.
Oh yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
it's cool. It's cool that worked out.
Oh, and even though I don't typically play tapped lands, I do play triomes in all my decks.
Which and
So-
there's probably 2 tap lands I play regularly, and that would be Majuka Bog and the Myriad Landscape.
Okay. Yeah. So the reason
Yeah,
why
'cause
I
you
play
get 2
the
bases.
reason why I play triomes is typically early game I'm fetching them out, and I can have multiple lands in my hand and have a choice. If it's a moment where that extra mana isn't going to matter, I'll play a triome, and now I'm mana fixed. If it is going to matter, I play the other land. That's also why I like 37 lands. I like to have a choice of what I play, so I have the right color.
I'm surprised you haven't run into. Well, I guess you can still get the other stuff, but your land ramp is basic. It gets basic.
Not all of it.
Most,
Like Open the Way isn't.
but most of them do, right?
No,
Well,
most
we could
of
look
them-
at them. Farseed
most of
doesn't.
them
Most of them probably
Okay,
have
the ones
not.
you're playing.
Yeah,
Okay.
most of the ones that he plays specifically say a land type, not a basic land. So
Like
that's
I
if
think
you go get a
Wraith,
forest or mountain.
Sky Shroud Claim is also forest. 3 Visits, I think, says it.
Forest,
so,
yeah, 3 visits. Is
Yeah, so most of them. But I do have Cultivate in here, and I do
That's a
have
basic.
Rampant Growth,
That's a basic.
and those are basics, right?
So okay. So overall, what's your strategy?
Well, as we've talked about, I do try to put out enough stuff to where it's doing things on the board, try to early game ramp, build value, and then after I've seen things pass through, I typically go for the win. So
Right. So what he's saying is he played, just to kind of translate, play enough that it's doing stuff, but don't play any more than that
right, you may
until
play
the board waves come.
you may play a creature just so you don't get killed.
Right.
Right? Because you want to stop damage, but you have to be mindful of being the threat, especially when you're playing. If you play a big stompy dinosaur, you can hit one person with it. So everybody will be scared of it, but you can only hurt one person. So just don't make yourself the threat when you don't need to be.
Right.
Let someone else be the threat. Play something slightly less powerful than they did, and then you kind of ease yourself into it. And then once you get enough value out there, then you lay down the big boy and you go to town.
So when you're playing against Jeff, don't feel bad when he has nothing. He's gaming you.
Yeah, but
Or just
I'm
count
not
all the
saying
ramp.
I'm not saying you have nothing that you can do.
No, I know.
You have
But I'm
stuff out
saying,
there like you
but I'm
can.
saying when they look at Jeff and say, "Well, I feel bad. He's only got 3 creatures, and a bunch of lands. Everybody else has like a much bigger board state. Don't fall for it."
Yeah, remember cards in hand matter. So like if someone has 4 things on the board but 0 cards in hand, they might be less scary than someone with 0 things on the board and 5 cards in hand.
So just kind of that. Anything else you want to say about the deck?
No, I think someone requested it. Did one
Yeah,
of
It was
our-
Alex from last week.
Yep, Alex requested it.
So
There you go, Alex.
thank you, Alex.
There you go. And I will post the link to the deck on Moxfield. I'll put it in the description of the episode.
And if you want me to try anything in the deck, I'll get whatever card you want me to try or whatever cards, and I'll put them in and give it a shot. Let you know. Just go, email.
Cast at commanderspot.com and
Thank you.
let us know.
Yep.
Or you can put it in the comments of the video. Or the audio. Either way. Let's move on to pro tips from a non-pro.
Yeah, so just rounding out the last 5 3-color named combinations in Magic. I was just going to finish it up for us here. And I think that we would then have hit every single color combination at that point. Because
Really?
we did some of the other ones a while ago, and then I took a little bit of a break from going through these. So the last 5, which were done in not Shards of Alara, that was what the first 5 were. The next 5 were done in, let me see if I can find it here in my thing as I try to speed read, which I can't read to begin with. So
Just memorize a lot of
yeah,
words.
just memorize a bunch of words. The next 5 were through a set of whole multicolored cards. Oh no, that was the same one. Why is it doing that? Cycles. Okay, there we go. So these next 5 they're not as themed as the first 5 were. When we went over it, I mentioned that it was like Bant was about Exalted, and the other one was that. These ones where they kind of just made the 5 colors, and
They
then,
just kind of obligatory.
They got lazy.
named them because they felt like they had.
These are the lazy.
Right.
This is a lazy.
No, the lazy was
Color
the four
combinations.
color because they only named them after the Nephilim, which were the most famous.
But at least they named it after something. Did
Yeah.
they name these after anything?
I don't think they did. I can't remember.
We're never gonna
what
find
they
out
said.
what they are, though.
But so white, black, green was Abzin, which I think that might have been another plane. But there's a couple of actual like Asvin cards, like Abzin Falconeer, I think is a guy or something like that, and he's a white, black. So there's Asvin, there's Jeskai, white, blue, red. Mardu, which is white, black, red. Sultai, which is blue, black, green, and Timur, which is blue, red, green.
Is this a charm cycle?
I can't remember what it was, which is slightly
Because I
upsetting
think those
because
are
I had-
charms. This
So-
might be the charm cycle.
But they were, I know all of those are, I think they're actual, are those planeswalkers too? I think all of those people?
I don't know about planeswalkers, but they did name things after those.
Yeah,
colors.
Jeskai's Will.
Mardu Chief and
Yeah.
things like that. Jeskai Will, yeah, it did. So they did more of naming things after them, I think, with those ones than they did the others to kind of give them some legitimacy.
Right, and so
But
it was,
I will say the other color combinations I think you could go through. There's the new Capenna clans.
oh yeah, the clans that are,
But the problem with that is you've gone over the names of all the color combinations, but then they have since done the clans in New Capenna.
Yes.
They've done the schools in Strixhaven, which
Right.
were all color combinations.
So you
Right.
could be talking to someone who's like come from that was their first set, and that's what they learned, and you're like, what are you talking about?
Yeah.
Strixhaven? What's
Yeah.
that? And
The
you're like,
millennials versus
you got
the
that
Gen
wrong,
Xers.
dude. It's not Strixhaven, it's Mardu or whatever. You're like, I don't know. And then you just fist fight, right? 'Cause
Yeah,
that's how you should decide arguments, I think.
Yeah, no, you play for Annie. That's how things should be solved.
Yeah. yeah.
geez Louise.
Make Jeff flip into that guy that's creative.
Oh my
Play for
gosh,
Annie.
you're trying to steal my card? No way. Get out of here.
I mean, the one he plays with is only the collector's edition, so it's fine.
Yeah, not that expensive. So, but
Okay.
yeah, so those are the last, and again, like they said, those are like the original naming of the color combinations. If you're like one of these newer players and you're like, oh, well, what's the school of Strixhaven? What are those? We don't talk about those. Those are the original ones. That's
Well,
what they should be.
We don't talk about Bruno.
Yeah. Or Disney Hell,
Yeah. So, okay, cool. So now you know. And knowing's half the battle.
G.I. Joe.
That's copyrighted. What are you doing?
right?
G.I. John.
All right, there, that's better. So anyway, that's all the time we have for today. Thanks for joining us, as always. Check us out on commanderspod.com. You can support us, as Jeff said, patreon.com/commanderspod. We would sure love to have you help us. We just invested a lot of money in these mics, so if we can get some of that back in some form.
Yeah.
And we need to buy camera set up for play, to play.
Yeah,
to
we have
record.
a couple cameras, but if we can get a couple more, we could do a real good play setup. So we have some stuff we want to do down the road, and your help could get us there, and we'd really appreciate it. And we are going to have more benefits for our Patreon subscribers, including, like I said, they will gain an added benefit in the upcoming contest. So you can also email us, cast@commanderspod.com. We really love hearing from you guys.
Yeah.
I love when I get the questions. I love that Alex requested the Gishath deck. Oliver, we haven't heard from you in a while. Drop us a line. Let us know what you're looking for. You gave us some good suggestions at the beginning. I know you're still supporting us, so I appreciate it. And
Yeah, thanks, Oliver.
Thank you, Oliver.
and like I said, you will gain some benefits if you want to enter the contest coming up, which next episode is our 50th episode. That's
Yes,
pretty
sir.
exciting.
Yeah.
And that's where we will discuss the full rules of the contest, exactly what's going on. But again, just to remind you, it will be the Marvel Secret Lair Foil Edition. We have a backpack, we have a crossbody bag, and maybe we might even have some other stuff we might do. So just some exciting stuff coming up. So don't forget to tune in next week. Thanks again for joining us, and don't forget, kill Andrew first.
Which we did.
Commander's Pod, where the stories From my decks to yours, we share the spark. In this world of magic, we'll leave a mark. Whoa.